I feel it's time to address the yarn-shaped elephant in the room. Our relationship to our yarn stashes. Because in this economic climate, nothing becomes this widespread, this visible, and this emotionally loaded without also becoming useful to the system that surrounds it. Knitting is often described as a simple pleasure, a slow hobby, something separate from money and from pressure and from productivity. And I've been getting some pushback with this series by people who want to divorce knitting from politics. But honey, everything is political. So our hobbies are deeply intertwined with not only economics and politics, but also the wider society around us. Knitting, especially today, is not financially neutral. Participation has a cost. There is a moment in most knitters' lives when the yarn that we own suddenly exceeds the amount that we will ever realistically knit. It happens gradually, skein by skein, without a clear decision ever being made, intentionally building a curated collection of yarns that we love and inspires us. No, for the most part, I don't believe that things work out like that. Most of us have a lot of yarn and other crafting materials in our homes, and this accumulation is usually framed as a problem, a lack of discipline or failure of restraint or discernment, evidence of overconsumption. And if you do a simple search on the internet, there is no shortage of yarn stash commentary telling us that overconsumption is bad. And this is true, and I'm sure we all know this. We should be more mindful about our yarn purchases. But I'm not sure that that's the whole story. I, for one, do not have the skills nor bandwidth to go into the psychopathy of hoarding. That is a very complex issue, and one that is shrouded in guilt, shame, and judgment. Yarn stashes don't exist in isolation, however. They exist inside of an economic system. And in that system, stash begins to look less like excess and more like adaptation. Because yarn stashes does something very specific. It facilitates participation. It allows you to continue knitting even during those times where you cannot afford to shop or go out, even when prices rise or when your income falls and the economy becomes even more volatile. Our stashes protect our ability to continue. Hi, editing me here. I just want to jump on at this point and briefly mention tariffs, as they are beginning to impact the craft world in real time. The US have added import taxes and surcharges on all European goods, including textiles. So that's going to make yarn more expensive for not just Americans, but also for the world in general. And that matters because so much of the world's wool is produced and spun in the UK and in Europe. So that will highly restrict American access to yarns. So that shows that even small policy changes can ripple out and change what yarns are available, to whom, and when. And ultimately, that will affect what ends up in our stashes. It's the butterfly effect. Well, it's not even the butterfly effect. It's not indefinitely for most people. Hey, I'm not talking about a sable amount of yarn. I think that those quantities of yarns are outliers in the grand scheme of crafting.
It's yarnscaping, but right now it's a yarn catastrophe. I'm procrastinating.
So when we are talking quantities, I feel like the average crafter would have between 50 and 100 skeins of yarn. I think that I sit within that range. I've never actually counted. How about you? If you know, just out of curiosity, if you do know how much yarn you have, please drop that amount in the comments. I'm trying to see something. But anyway, our stashes allow us to continue. Not forever, but long enough. So in this way, our stashes provide a little safety net, a buffer against uncertainty, if you will, in a world that often feels financially insecure. Many crafters emphasize the joy and comfort that crafting provides. So stockpiling beautiful, soft, tactile yarn, I think, is an extension of that. Have you ever stopped to consider how much your stash is worth, just there sitting on your shelves and in bins? But the cost of participation is not only financial, it's also social. Because yarn is not just material, it also acts like a signal or a beacon. And different fibres carry different meanings. Wool, cashmere, acrylic, they aren't just names of different materials. They also act like identity markers. And just like the clothes we wear, they communicate things about the crafter. And dare I say, their ideologies, their values, priorities, and their place within the crafting community. Natural fibres, often in muted or naturally occurring colours, are often associated with tradition, sustainability, seriousness, while acrylic is often framed differently. Synthetic, easy to care for, cheap, lesser, even when it is practical, accessible, and sometimes the only realistically affordable option. And I know some may disagree here, but over time, these material choices begin to shape the ideation of social belonging. They help to define who is seen as a serious knitter, not officially, not explicitly, but culturally, through alignment with and affiliation to certain prominent figures within the crafting community. They may shill a particular covetable lifestyle. Influence, my dear Watson, it's called influence. Choosing yarn is not only choosing what to make, it's also choosing how and where you position yourself. A demonstration of taste, of knowledge, and of legitimacy. Certain yarns signal luxury and material success, and certain yarns signal a moral alignment with the conservation of the environment in all their undyed, minimally processed splendor. These connotations are further visible through our color choices, in our finished objects, in how we style our makes and photograph them and video them. And these feelings are further reflected back to us through behaviors like petting, organizing, storing, displaying our yarn stashes. Even rituals like caking up our yarns or swatching in preparation for future use. So this is where money, identity, and power begin to overlap, because the ability to choose certain yarns is also shaped by economic access. Not everyone can afford hand-dyed wool, or afford to reject acrylic or discount yarns bought from big box stores, or can afford to align their material choices with their moral ideologies. So identity itself becomes unevenly distributed, built not only from creativity, but also resources and access to those resources. I personally would love to knit with using hand-dyed yarns all the time, but that's just not in my budget. I do tend to stick to animal fibres and non-superwash yarns because that's just my preference. But I'm fortunate enough to have access to pure wool cones, which works out very economic for me. Man, the more I think about yarn stashes, the more I realize how bad I am at keeping a comprehensive stash. I don't have a lot of yarns that are in sweaters quantity. This is another reason why I prefer to buy 500 gram cones, because they cost £20 and I know I can have a couple of sweaters quantity within that. We often shop for patterns and yarn with no project in mind, but we shop for our future selves. Maybe we are not at that skill level yet, but we dream of maybe one day owning that all over cabled sweater or that colorwork sweater in all of our favorite colors. So why not buy the yarn now and save it for that day? But within that same thought process, how about if we were to reframe that slightly? Think about it like this. Every skein represents hours of labor that we have yet to work. Sweaters that have yet to be made. Projects that exist only in their potential and their possibility. So our stash represents our future work, waiting for the time that we are ready.
Before me stands 12 beautiful girls still in the running to becoming America's next top.
I have certainly come across patterns and projects that I wanted to cast on immediately and was saved by my stash. In online culture, for creators, that future work our stashes represent is never entirely private. Thus, it also represents future content, future engagement, future value, not only for the creator, but for the platforms. Platforms, remember that the creators do not own. Our stashes become privately funded inventory for a publicly owned attention economy. And yet, stash remains deeply personal because it doesn't just amount to yarn. It stores identity and status, personal and to some extent social proof that you are a crafter, worthy of beautiful things arranged and stored enviably. It's proof that you belong, and each skein that you acquire holds a version of you that you hope to one day become. A future version that is more productive, more creative, more stylish, more fulfilled. So our stashes become an archive of creative possibility. And that's the contradiction. Because if we say our stashes represent freedom, the freedom to create whenever we want to create, it simultaneously represents an obligation, acute awareness of money already spent, of work not yet done, of our potentials not yet realized. And I think that that's one of the things that may cause guilt and overwhelm within us when we look at our stashes. And at this point, it becomes difficult to talk about knitting without also talking about the system that surrounds it. Not just yarns, not just patterns, and not just platforms, but the entire structure that makes modern craft possible. A structure made of material production, attention, and consumption, because every part of crafting today exists within that structure. So this is what I mean when I talk about the system. It's not something that is abstract or distant. It's all built around ordinary actions: buying, collecting, saving, storing, hoarding yarn. Each individual action feels small, personal, and insignificant, but collectively they sustain something much larger: an economy, an attention economy, a creative economy, a platform economy, all layered together. And this is why stashes take on a different meaning. And the truth at the center of modern craft: to participate is to become part of the system yourself. So our yarn stashes is not only a story of consumption, it's also about security. It's about identity, labor, power, economy. Because inside modern craft culture, the ability to accumulate materials is also the ability to remain visible, to remain active, to remain present, even when the economic ground beneath us shifts. Perhaps most importantly though, yarn stashes reveal something even deeper about us, because stashes allow us to believe in continuity. Yes, continuity of our creativity, of our identity, continuity of ourselves. It reassures us that even when life gets unstable, even if money becomes tight and even time becomes scarce, that part of us will still exists, ready and waiting. It reminds us that we will knit again. You will have the energy to make that thing, because you will have the resources to make that thing. And this is maybe why our stashes become so emotionally powerful. It protects belief, that belief in ourselves, that belief in the future. But that future is never guaranteed. The system doesn't guarantee it. The system only sells us the materials, because a yarn stash is not just a collection of materials. It's a record of all the work that we believed that we would one day have the time and the security to do. Thank you all so much for watching once again. There was a time in my life when I found it incredibly difficult to throw away even the tiny little ends of yarn that you would get after weaving in all your ends. And I don't tend to throw away any yarn because it's a material resource, you know. But anyway, so I made a little 1-minute video, so I've tacked it on the end of this video for you to enjoy. It's up on my page and it's been up for years. Please enjoy it and hit that like button if you appreciate what I do. I will see you in the next one.